best program for finding ORF from any given sequence. All right. So comes from NCBI. All right. All you have to do is you just have to type ORF finder in your Google search. It would straight away lead you to this page. All right. Alternatively, what you can do is you can also go to your ncbi.llm.nih.gov, and then you can select the ORF finder. Either way. All right. Now see, what does it do? It searches for open reading frame. All right. So what is the input sequence for an open reading for this program? It's a DNA sequence. So you enter a DNA sequence, and then it searches for open reading frame. And what does it return? It returns a predicted protein sequence, which is the possible translation for your sequence, for your DNA sequence. All right. You see, why is this necessary? We know that whatever gene sequence that we enter is not going to be completely coded into corresponding protein sequences, isn't it? In the case of eukaryotes, you have several things in a gene. All right. You see, you have a gene is a very bigger term. It includes introns, it includes both introns and exons, and then control sequences. It's promoter. There are upstream promoters. There are downstream promoters. All right, and then there are starting codons, and then there are termination codons. There are several things, but you don't see all those structures in a protein sequence. All right, if you compare, you can easily find that out. You just take any protein, any popular protein, take some small protein, all right, just 50 amino acids or 100 amino acids, and then take its corresponding gene, and then just do a manual comparison. You just find out that at the very minimum, if it is 100, then you would expect 300 nucleotide sequences, isn't it? At the very minimum. It won't be the case. It will be more than that, all right? And there are other elements also. You can just make a comparison that is case dependent. All right. It changes from case to case, but you can compare and you would find out that in all the cases, there would be more to a gene than the protein sequence. All right. That is because of all the structural elements of the gene. Now, why do we need this kind of programs? See, for example, you have a novel sequence. You have sequenced something new, right? And then it could be a complete genome, or it could be a segment of a genome, or it could be a very small segment of a DNA molecule. All right. So you just have a very small 500, 600 nucleotides. All right. You have sequenced some region in a chromosome, and then you want to see whether it codes for any meaningful protein. Then you can use a program like this. It would look for the open reading frame. That is why it's called as an ORF finder. All right. So that is the difference between an ORF and a gene. Right? So what we do is the preliminary functionalities are much simpler. All you have to do is you just have to enter the sequence if you have, or if the sequence is already deposited in a database, you just have to use the corresponding gene index or its corresponding accession number, any type of accession number. It doesn't matter. Right? Just give the, if it is already there in the database and you know the accession number, you just give the accession number there in this column. If you don't know the accession number, just give the nucleotide sequence in FASTA format. It doesn't accept any other format. Right? Just give the nucleotide sequence in FASTA format. You just copy and paste here. That's enough. All right. So now what I do is I just take some example. All right. Okay. Just the accession number. All right. Now leave this option. This is not necessary. All right. Quite more often you are not going to use this option. All right. Minimal ORF length. This is something that you can select. All right. Depending on the length of your sequence. 300 is optimal. All right. You can also give 600, no problem. But I keep it as 300. And then, very important, what is the genetic code, right? See, there are so many codon tables available, 31 codon tables, right? So what are we going to use here? That is something that comes from the knowledge of the experiment that we are performing. In this case, you see, we have taken Salmonella as an example, right? Salmonella is what? Salmonella plasmid, in fact. Salmonella is what? It's a bacteria, isn't it? So that is why we have taken the genetic code of bacteria, archaeal, and plant plastid group, right? So there will be small differences in genetic code. They would say in your textbooks that genetic code is universal, right? Only mitochondrial genetic code differs, and the remaining genetic code is universal. But that's not the case. There will be small differences, all right? So that is why you have so many types of genetic code. So the standard genetic code is what you see in your textbooks, and then you will see a mitochondrial genetic code. But you have genetic codes, different genetic codes for yeast mitochondria, and these coelenterate mitochondria. Mycoplasma has a different, invertebrate mitochondria has a different genetic code. All right, all these things, echinoderms, platform mitochondria, and then ascidians, right? Different types of mitochondria, and then you also have a specialized, optimized code for bacteria, archaea, and plant plastids. So that is what we have selected. And what we can do is we can also check one of these options. Normally, in 98% of cases, the start codon is ATG only. All right, but rarely, this is textbook material, we would have studied that. Rarely, sometimes there will be other starting codons as well, right? So that can be given here. And if you say this is domain specific, all right, any kind of sense codon, I consider that as a starting codon. All right, if I select that option, that could also be selected. When do you select this option? You are aware that or you are aware that your the DNA sequence is not complete. By some other experimental methods, you know that it doesn't start at ATG by sequencing itself. There is something that has happened while isolating the gene or while amplifying. Normally, how do we isolate the gene and sequence them? We amplify by means of a PCR, isn't it? So the primer itself is somewhere downstream. And I am very well aware that my primer is somewhere downstream and it doesn't start at ATG. In that case, I'll have to select this option. All right. So right now we'll just select option 2. That is the safest bet. If you don't know anything about your sequence, the safest bet is this option 2. Right? Ignore nested ORF. What does this mean? You see, mostly eukaryotes, humans, particularly human genome, mouse genome, you'd see that there would be alternate splicing, and it would kind of a single gene could code for more than 2 or 3 products. In that case, we call that a nested ORF, right? But here we are only using bacterial sequence, so it doesn't matter. All right, so we just select this option, and then you just have to submit. All right. So after a few minutes, depending on the traffic, you get your results. So this is your result page, right? As I told you, the input sequence was nucleotide sequence, and the output is the open reading frame, a protein sequence. All right. So what it means is that if the input sequence that you had given is a valid gene, It is not validating whether it is a gene or not. You have to understand that very clearly. It never says whether it is a gene or not. It assumes that it is a gene because you have said it is a gene. All right. So it gives you this sequence, the most probable protein sequence that could arrive, that you could get from that particular nucleotide sequence that you get is this one. All right. But there are other probable sequences as well. All the options are given, but mostly these are all ranked, right? Mostly the first one would be correct, right? You can just take that. What we can do now is, once you have got this, we can check whether it is correct or not, right? What you do is, I'll perform a blast search. Don't go for the smart blast, just use a blast search, that should be fine. All right, we don't want any complicated algorithms. A simple blast search should fetch some meaningful result. Then only I can be confident about this. So I'll perform a blast search. I guess you by now you would know what is a blast search. Blast search is basic local alignment search tool. It is a search tool. It looks for homologous sequences in any database that I give. I select UniProt, SwissProt. You can also select RefSeq or NR. Right? We'll select NR for now because we don't want any redundancy. So it select a non-redundant protein sequence database NR. Perform the blast search. So it takes you to the blast window. Don't bother about the parameters here because since we are it is directly linked, everything would be appropriately selected. Your input sequence is blast P, so protein, so blast P. Everything would be appropriately selected. You won't have to bother about this. Just click this. It takes a while, all right. So your input sequence is one, but this one sequence is compared with a few million sequences in the database. So actually, a very complicated program is running behind, right? The web interface might look simpler, but here right now a few million comparisons are made, string comparisons are made. So that is why it takes so much time. All right. So it's done. So what do we find here? The identified ORF codes for mobilization nuclease domain containing protein of Salmonella enterica. This is something that we know already, isn't it? We gave a known case. The sequence was from Salmonella, the nucleotide sequence, but we didn't know what protein it codes for, right? So now by means of the simple bioinformatics search, we have identified it to be this particular protein, right? It's called as relaxase, or alternatively mobilization nuclease domain containing protein. So it's just a small domain of a big protein, right? Its length is 813. Of course, it comes from the nucleotide sequence that I gave. If I had given a bigger nucleotide sequence, I would have got a bigger protein because it is just giving one small domain, right? You see, it's an exact match because we have given a known case, right? So 100% match, 813 identities, everything. We don't have to bother. The expected value is 0. E value of 0 means there is no chance of this being random, right? The score is also very good, 1618 bits. Anyway, so this is how we identify the ORF and the knowledge about the corresponding protein that it codes for, right? In this case, since it is already known, the sequence that I gave is already known, you get a 100% match. If you are giving a new sequence, you won't get a 100% match, but you would get a good score here and a negative E value here, and these values would differ appropriately. All right. Let me show something else for you. There could be something else that gives you a different kind of picture. All right, you see here. If you are giving something else, the new sequence, the novel sequence for which you don't know anything, you have sequenced that, right? You get something like this. So it gives you the alignment, a similarity with some other bacteria which is homologous, right? In this case, it is known as the Aeromonas caviae, right? Some bacteria. Okay. Now you see here also the expectant value is 0. Good, very good. But look at this. There are only 94% of identities and 778 positives. What we mean by positives here is, you see, this is query is the sequence that we gave from our ORF. All right. This is the sequence that is present in the database. So now you see there is an M here, there is an M here, there is a perfect match that is called as the identity. All right. So in this sequence, out of the 812 amino acids that we gave, 762 were exactly the same. The remaining were different. You look here. There is a serine here, yes. All right. I guess some of you would be viewing through your mobile phones. So I'd make it a bit bigger. I guess somebody has already annotated my screen. Very good. Good job. All right. Okay. So before me disabling the option, I guess. All right. So you see here. So an S and an N. S is serine, N is asparagine. All right. Two different amino acids, but still they share some degree of physical properties and chemical properties. That is why there is a positive here, and that is reflected in this, right? The positives. The number of positives, right? 95%, right? Similarly, there could be mismatches as well. So there is an asparagine here and a glutamine here. Completely different, isn't it? Asparagine is different, glutamine is very positively charged. So there is no, this is called as a mismatch. That is also possible. There is another mismatch here. There is a leucine here and a proline here. There is a mismatch. Similarly, a glycine and a serine, another mismatch. Leucine and a proline once again. And then you have a threonine and an alanine, a mismatch. So several mismatches. And they are also accounted. And you see there is a gap here. So there has been a insertion in your query, right? Nature allows insertion and deletion and mutations. So that is what is reflected here. Unless you see, to an extent, they are important from the perspective of evolution. These kind of mutations, deletions, insertions are important. That's how we evolve. We acquire new traits, right? So that is reflected here. Now, why I am saying this? Why I am taking this as an example? You see, the example that I gave here is something that is already known. So you'll get a 100% match. There is nothing exciting in that. If you have a new sequence, you would get something like this only. All right. So you can understand about your ORF based on this alignment only. This is not a perfect alignment. There are insertions here. There are mutations here. All right. However, it has a very good score. The E value should be 0 or lesser in negative. All right. So that is a good parameter for the alignment, and then identity is 94%. That is good. All right. Normally, we take 60% identity itself as a very good alignment. Here it is 94%. All right. So these are the parameters that allow us to say something about the ORF that we have identified. All right. So it straight away look for the function of this. This also says relaxes mobilization nucleus domain. So the ORF that we have identified is belonging to a class of protein, class of enzymes called relaxase. All right. So that is what I am trying to give here. So you have to understand this clearly. It's not only important to identify the presence of an ORF, you should also be able to say what is that ORF, right? What protein does it code for? So that is a result, right? Okay. So this is how you identify the ORF. There are other physical maps as well in the result. All right. So corresponding genome, all right, and their corresponding your region, exact locus of the ORF that has been identified. These are the other smaller ORF that are predicted. All right. I told you that it gives you a list of ORFs, isn't it? So it gives you a list of ORF. So these are the other smaller ORF that has been predicted. But most often they would be wrong, right? You just take the first one. That is enough. All right. This is regarding predicting ORF. I would further like to move towards gene prediction. All right. All right. Good. So now you see, earlier program was to predict the ORF. So the input sequence for the nucleotide sequence, the output sequence is a protein sequence. All right. But here, what we are trying to do is, in the ORF prediction, we assume that we already know that it is a gene sequence. We only wanted to know what protein it codes for. Here, we assume that you have some length of DNA sequence, and you don't know which one is the gene there. It has whether it has some gene or not. First of all right. Say you have a few thousand. Say let us say you have some 6,000, 7,000 nucleotide sequence. All right. You have randomly sequenced some part of the chromosome, and then you want to know whether that region has some gene or not. First of all, right. So for that you use these kind of programs. So understand the difference. There you already know it is a gene, and you wanted to know the product. Here, you don't know whether it is a gene or not. You just have some sequence in your hand, and you want to confirm whether it is a gene, and if it is a gene, what is the gene? All right. So that is the difference between both of the programs. Now, there are several ways of identifying the genes, right? Broadly, two classifications. One is empirical methods. The other one is probabilistic methods, right? What does empirical methods do? Empirical methods simply use previously known sequences, previously known data to identify gene. All right. What do I mean by previously known data? It could be intrinsic or it could be extrinsic. Intrinsic data is the structure that we have to look in the sequence. Presence of start codon, presence of promoter sequence. There is promoter sequences, or there is a consensus for promoter sequences, isn't it? And there are locations for promoter sequences. Say, for example, in -10, you have the Tata box or Tata 80 consensus. In -35, you have a GC. And then -10, for example, in eukaryotes, there is a -10, which there are three types of promoters, right? So promoter, there are some promoters that have downstream, that form an element in the downstream, right, below the ATG, right? So whether in ATG, corresponding promoter elements, corresponding upstream binding elements, corresponding signals for introns, exons. So these are patterns that are present within a gene and have certain set of previously defined notions, previously defined positions. If the program looks for that and identifies the gene, then that is looking for intrinsic empirical data. There could be extrinsic empirical data as well. That looks for homology, right? Previously known sequences, take this sequence, see whether it is similar to previously known sequence, and then based on that, it concludes whether it is a gene or where is the gene in that entire sequence. You see, you're given 6,000 nucleotides. All the 6,000 nucleotides need not be a gene. So some region, say 1,500 nucleotides in between could be a gene. Right? All these things are identified. Right? So there's another program. All right, Augustus. So this is another program which could give you by means of intrinsic formats. All right, and then you have GeneScan. GeneScan is one good program that could provide you with by means of probabilistic method. All right, this uses this uses intrinsic patterns, looks for exon intron structures of genes, and then it gives you the corresponding uh, gene sequence. All right, we just see one by one. I will start with Augustus. This is a very successful program. All right. So what you do is I'll just fill in an example. Some nucleotide sequence in FASTA format. All right. So this is the nucleotide sequence. And if you already know what is you should know, all right, because you are the one who has sequence. So you should know what is the organism. So this is from Homo sapiens. So just select the appropriate organism. If you have the sequence in a file, you can also go here, all right, select the file from your computer, select something from your computer, you have the sequence. So it would appear here, or you can select the sequence, you can open the sequence in a WordPad, copy and paste, right? You could do anything, but it should be in FASTA format, all right? So it is in FASTA format, okay? So all you have to do is you have to select these parameters, select both strands, that is the safest bet, all right? Because we have sequenced something, but we don't know whether the gene is going to be in the strand that you have the sequence or in the opposite strand. So you just select both the strands. But if you know for sure it is either in one of the strands, the gene is present in one of the strands, you can select one of these. But mostly we won't know this, so select this option, both strands. And do you want to look for alternate transcripts? Normally I select none. All right, I don't want to look for alternate transcripts, but few could also be selected. Don't select these options. All right, they are messy. They kind of uh, produce some kind of nonsense data. All right, so these are for people who work with these kind of algorithms. All right, we don't bother about this. Just select few. All right, and then just run Augustus. It gives you the sequence. All right, so this is the gene, and this is this corresponding protein. All right, now this protein we don't know, we are not sure. All right, for example, you look at this region, completely nonsense. All right, but it doesn't matter. we already know that genes contain introns, exons. We have to do further analysis here. But nevertheless, you just see that the gene that has been predicted would be correct, right? This region. So this is the gene that has been predicted, and if that gene is already present in the database, you would also get its corresponding IDs. So its corresponding transcription ID, corresponding gene IDs, everything. All right. If it is not present, you won't get that, but that doesn't matter. If you have a novel sequence, you wouldn't get anything. Right. So this is how you identify or you predict a gene from a given nucleotide sequence. So this Augustus looks for, as I told you, it looks for intrinsic patterns and then predicts. Right. What I do now is I would select the same sequence and then I will use this gene scan. All right. You look this. This is very simple. All right. This is optional. You can give a sequence name or you just leave it. You know it's a vertebrate. So these are the only options that you have. So just select. We know it's human sequence, all right. So just select vertebrate. So it gives you a corresponding positions, all right, positions in the nucleotide. It doesn't give you the sequence as the earlier program gave. It just gives you the positions. It tells us from this to this, it is an exon. And these are all from this nucleotide to this nucleotide, you have introns and things like that. All right, sorry. It gives you the promoter. So the from out of the sequence that I gave, this promoter lies in this region 1616 to 1655 with a length of 40 nucleotides, and then these are the intronic regions in the gene. The remaining are exons. All right. So how many introns do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So this output has to be reinterpreted. You have to take your sequence once again and then identify the regions based on the nucleotide sequence that has been given here, and then conclude that in my gene, this is the starting point, this is the promoter, and these are the introns, and corresponding structure has to be obtained by means of comparing this with the FASTA sequence that you originally gave. All right. Now, do is you look at the third program. Gene mark. I'll use the same sequence. It select the species. We already know it's so you see you have a variety of options here, but all of them seems to be bacterial, right? So this is something that you have to be mindful of. You see, these programs doesn't give you. See, in a earlier example, we saw that the genomes that we had for comparison was for vertebrates and Arabidopsis and maize. Here you have only a set of bacterial sequences, but nevertheless we try with give this and see. All right. So it also gives us a list of parameters corresponding coding frame. It says that there are 3 coding frames here, and from these corresponding nucleotides to these corresponding nucleotides. All right. Now you see these are all predictions, right? You have to make use of all the uh, programs that are available, and then compare them, and then see which one makes sense. It changes for from case for case by case. All right. For one case, one of the program might be successful. For the other case, the other program might be successful. All right. So in this case, I used 3 different strategies. I selected these 3 programs because of the 3 different strategies. One, intrinsic patterns. The other one is probabilistic model. The third one is extrinsic pattern. Right. So out of these, what was successful was this Augustus. All right. But for some other sequence, it could be some other protein. Sorry, some other program. So you have to try and arrive at a consensus. Now I would just use this option. Uses a graphical browsable results. So it tells us clearly. So it's a HSACK1 CKI10 gene. All right. So that's what it says. What is the landmark region? It says here. All right. You have other options here. You can annotate the restriction sites. You can download the FASTA file. All right. Decorated FASTA file is structurally annotated. All right. You can download the sequence file. This gives us a graphical window of where the gene is present, all right, or where it has been predicted to be present. So this is your entire sequence that we gave inside, all right, and this is the region that has been predicted to be a gene. So the promoter and then corresponding sequences that can be obtained by clicking those bars, all right. So this one, the gene position here, length is this, corresponding scores. So like this, it's possible to predict gene, but understand very clearly that there are 3 different approaches. So I have selected 3 different programs, and the success of this prediction would vary. In this case, Augustus has been good. Most often, practically, I have found Augustus to be good, but the other program should also be tried, right? Only when we get something convincing, the other results that we saw were not convincing, isn't it? So other results that we saw were not as holistic or as convincing as this one. It goes on, all right. So we have selected this as our most probable prediction, all right. So to sum up, what did we see today? we saw the difference between ORF finding and gene finding. ORF finding, we use the NCBI's ORF finder, a very good program. You can close your eyes and use that, no problem, tested to such an extent. But gene finding is a little bit difficult. It's not as straightforward as that. But nevertheless, there are programs that could do this, and you can make the most probable prediction. And once again, it has to be confirmed by means of experiment. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I would stop sharing my screen. Okay. I think it's already all right. So I would be happy to answer your questions. All right. So there are a set of questions. So exon cutoff. You see, there is no strict value for exon cutoff. There is an E value cutoff when you search for homology. All right. So that is what we have to consider while looking for homology. Yeah, normally, we what it means is it tells us. You see, as I told you, the program searches for string. It is if you are proficient in computational terms, see that what we are trying to do is we are trying to match text strings. That's all, right? So your query sequence, what we gave itself was about 5,000 characters. The database will have about 100 million characters. So 5,000 characters is matched against 100 million characters. So there is a possibility that you get results that are completely random, but it would look meaningful. So we need some parameters that should say how far it is random. That is what is given by means of this kind of numbers which are given as cutoffs. Right? E value cutoff could be meaningful. All right. Whereas the other scores for exons, introns, all those things should be taken with a pinch of salt. What I mean is, these are, you see, bioinformatics alone cannot stand separately. It has to be, it is normally supporting, particularly these type of works, or supporting experimental works. All right. So there should be experiments to prove this, and then it's a kind of loop. So data comes from experiment, and then you do these kind of searches. Once again, go back to the experiment. That is how we prove things, not just by means of cutoff alone, right? Okay. So the next question. See, our gene scan results, the prediction was not good. All right. That is why it was not showing any exon. So the very fact that you have identified that it is not showing any exon itself says that you have identified the results are not good. Right? Not every program. There are three different programs with three different algorithms, and in one case it would work good, in one case it might not work good. We just have to select the one that has taken to be good. All right. What are basically the applications of finding an ORF of a gene? That is a very interesting question. You see, what normally molecular biologists do is there was a conventional way of doing molecular biology earlier when we didn't have this kind of modern sequencing techniques. So what we used to do is we isolate the mRNA. Right, earlier in 2000, before 2000, what we used to do is we used to isolate mRNA. All right. So since it is an mRNA, we are already sure that it is coming from a gene. Right. So we don't have to bother about anything. Isolate the mRNA, get the cDNA, all right, and then create cDNA libraries, and then do the sequencing one by one. So the cDNA is sequenced. So there is no problem there. But the thing is, doing such a task is laborious. It takes, in some cases, it has taken 15 years, 10 years to construct a proper cDNA library and correspondingly sequence that. All right. I have seen in our lab itself, it had taken about 10, 15 years to construct a cDNA library completely. Besides, it is just cDNA. You have to understand that. It doesn't have information about introns or exons. But now we have modern sequencing machines where sequencing has become much simpler. So what people do nowadays is they just isolate the DNA and randomly sequence the DNA. You don't bother whether it codes for mRNA or not. Just sequence all the DNA that you have in hand. Get the sequence in hand. And then from that sequence, search for genes. That is the logic nowadays. That is simply because we have more computation power and the sequencing itself has become much cheaper, much faster. In today's standard, a genome sequence completely can be sequenced within a week at the most. All right. So that is why these kind of programs are important and the applications are here. So what you do is you have a DNA sequence at your hand, and then you are going to look for genes or look for proteins that it is going to code, whether it codes for something or not, all those things. Right? So that are the two paradigms. Earlier, you already know it is a gene sequence, and then you get the mRNA, cDNA, and then sequence it. Then there is no further this kind of bioinformatics approaches. Or you do a PCR, pull out the gene, and then sequence it. Then it stops there. But now it is not like that. Now you isolate the whole genome, sequence the complete genome, and then look for patterns, look for genes, everything later on. So that is the application of finding ORF or a gene. All right.